Welcome to the SU May podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Mae Gray. Here, it's unfiltered confidence, where we talk all the things about giving yourself permission and learning to lift yourself up and not wait for somebody else to do so that you can fulfill your dreams and your purpose in life confidently. Today, I have a fabulous guest who is actually probably going to be how do I say this? The oldest known guest to me. I've probably known him for the longest out of any guest that I've ever had on the show or potentially will have on the show.
Wow.
Because I know. Mr. Tony, welcome to the show. I had that realization that you will be the person that, I've known longer than anybody else so far on the show, at least so far on the show. How
I've never
cool is
been more honored in my life.
how long we've known each other a long time now.
A long time.
As
Yeah,
adult
wow.
years go.
Yes. As cat and dog years go, much longer.
Well, that's true too, but
Yes,
when you're an adult, sometimes it's hard to make friends, and then once you do make friends, they tend to come and go a lot more frequently.
it's true. It's
So,
because you don't have time for all these friends, and you gotta please
yeah.
everybody. It gets
Well,
annoying.
and then with social media, because you're just like you see them online, you feel connected even though you haven't talked for 5 years or something, right?
Yeah. I mean, who needs a real friends when you got thousands
Yeah,
of fake ones?
it's perfect. That's all I ever wanted was all the fake friends. Anyways, thank you for coming to the show. I appreciate you coming on.
Pleasure.
You are somebody that has always, in my opinion, although probably prior to we've probably known each other at least a decade, probably longer,
Yeah, maybe longer, yeah.
maybe longer than that actually, has been somebody who's always gone after what they want and at least on the surface appeared very confident and
Thanks.
wasn't allowing other people to hold them back. So I'd love you to just dive right in and tell the people a little bit about yourself, your journey, where you're at now, and why you've always felt the ability to chase after whatever it was that you wanted.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me on. This is fun. I haven't been, like, a guest on someone's podcast in forever, so this is
Oh,
cool.
well, welcome to the guest side of things. Are you
Thank you.
comfortable? You good? Do you need a hot tea or something?
A little later. Yeah, once we get, like, 20 minutes, I'll
Perfect.
Um, yeah, no, I definitely wasn't always confident. I think this is like the typical, Schmidt from New Girl story where I was like kind of a fat kid.
Show.
It's the best. And I was not really picked on too much, but like once I started getting into when I was in high school, I joined the wrestling team my freshman year and I sucked.
Oh,
I didn't get really good until like my sophomore, junior year, and then people started paying attention, and I lost some weight because of wrestling. And then I was on
duh.
the football team, and kind of all this. I didn't play obviously on the football team because I was too tiny, but I was on
Obviously.
the team. I was on the team, and I think I always kind of had this like confidence where I'm gonna be on the team. Like I'm gonna start.
Mm.
I'm gonna be the starting running back, and I wasn't. But I was always kind of like, at least I'm not fat anymore. Like,
Mm.
at least I'm on the team. So I
Mm.
was always kind of that, shoot for the stars, land on the moon type of guy. And I think that just kind of has grown as I've continued to be successful in business and personal life. And then, in real estate, where I bought a couple homes before the pandemic. And then right when the pandemic hit, I sold them and I was able to kind of have a nest egg. So if anything was to happen, I can kind of pursue my dream, which is starting my own company. And that's what I do now, as I have a content business that specializes in social media and podcasting, not just for personal brands, but big corporations as well that I've been able to work
Sure.
with. So it's been kind of cool, this journey, because I started prior to this in marketing and sales.
Yep.
So I've always been speaking in front of large groups, and we talked about Toastmasters before. I was part of Toastmasters for a while, and when I was at my old company, Monster Energy, they actually
Just a little company.
yeah.
Come just that.
It's just that. But they started a portion of their company where I was able to be a part of, where I trained the whole southeast of the company,
Mm.
and we actually started our own thing called Toast Monsters. Funny play
Yes.
on words, and it was the exact same concept. You get the coin and you speak and all that jazz.
Fantastic.
But it was really cool, and I think that kind of propelled me. This is almost 12 years ago, I think. and that kind of propelled me to where I was able to be in the marketing department,
Mhm.
and I was speaking in front of hundreds of people. And then I moved on from that company and went to another beverage company, and I was the national marketing manager. So I
Mhm.
ran. Obviously, I had much more direct reports,
Yep.
and I just think from there, just kind of like it snowballed, right, to where the only thing I want to do is impact people in some way. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, with most corporate jobs, like most things, there's a shelf life.
Yep.
And I realized that with both careers, where I thought I was going to retire with these companies, but something happened where that wasn't the case. So we talk about the nest egg that I had from real estate. Well, thankfully, I had that cushion to where I decided, now's the time. Now's the time where it's the pandemic, right? Like no one wants to be around each other. Everyone's remote. Like there could be some opportunity to do some stuff. I was already doing my podcast for a couple years at that point anyway, so I already kind of had like the following and the fan base for it already to start to monetize, and I decided to go all in. So
Yeah.
I spent more time focusing on my personal brand, my content, and putting out as much content as I could. And I went still to the day. I put out 1 to 2 pieces of video every single day, and then I had a lot of brands reach out to me, obviously for brand deals and sponsorships. And I went from doing things for free.
Mhm. Of course. Yep.
We all do. And
I think people miss that step a lot, right? I think a lot of
yes,
people think that they're just gonna instantly be making money. It's like, yeah, you gotta earn your way. You
that's
gotta
right.
do free stuff to prove that you're worth it.
100%.
That's
So
that's the real world.
once I did that for a year, I built up a nice portfolio working with brands. And then, they started asking me, like, hey, we don't have like a social media team. Are you able to like post things for us? And I was like, hmm,
Can I
yeah,
charge?
let me go ahead and add that service to my Rolodex of things to do.
Sure. Of course I
So,
can.
so
Let me
now
figure
that's,
that out real quick.
yeah. So now that's really all I do is I manage social media accounts, but I essentially teach brands how to create. It's a three-step process, but it's content ideation,
Yep.
right? Like, so coming up with the actual content ideas, that means looking at competitors, that means, identifying your audience, so on and so forth. There's a whole structure behind that. And then, of course, just making the content, which is sometimes the hardest part. And whether that's UGC style or, it could be trending sounds or POV or text based content. Sometimes like places like LinkedIn, video is not performing as well as maybe a TikTok. So text
Yeah.
based on LinkedIn is more important. So then that's the creating of the content, and of course the posting of the content. That sometimes also is the hardest part if you don't have a team. Where when do you post? What are the best times
Oh,
to
yeah.
post? Right. The
They
copy and
matter.
the description of what's on the post. Are you using hashtags? Are you using trending sound? Like all these things, I help people and brands just kind of come up with. And then on the side of that, I got my podcast, my personal podcast. So Amanda was on that earlier today, so that was fun.
What?
Launching soon, but that's the it's humanity and hashtags. So I
Mhm.
essentially talk about all that, which is I talk about social media and I talk about productivity, wellness, well being. So that's kind of the humanity portion of it, and then I talk about the creator economy, which is the hashtag portion of it. So I've been able to kind of combine my two passions through podcasting and through my business. And that is not good for really anybody's narcissism. So it's propelled me, I think, to where I'm able to work for myself. I'm able to spend 24/7 with my daughter. I'm able to be able to create things that I love. I'm able to hang out with my wife as much as I want. And I'm able to travel a lot because obviously I can monetize my business. So it's just been overall, I think, kind of leading to this point. I'm just getting started. I feel like I'm about to turn 40 in May, and I'm just like,
There you go.
I'm in the best time of my life. I'm so stoked for 2025 and moving forward, and yeah, I'm jazzed. So that's yeah, that's it.
Do you think there was
Bye.
ever, like, a catalyst? Do you think there was ever like, "Bye, I'm done. Okay, good talk, bye." Do you think there was ever, like, 1 or 2 incidences that really challenged you, and how did you overcome?
Yeah, good
In
question.
terms
I
of,
get the
like, having the confidence, right? Like, and not just letting somebody's negativity bring you down,
yeah,
or a lack of interaction.
sure. Yeah, I get that all the time actually. I think
You
there's
get
a
the
couple
question
things.
or you get the negativity.
I get the question, but also
Okay,
no, just
okay.
kidding.
It's the
Yeah, no, I
same
get
thing.
a lot of people ask me all the time. They're like, how do you have the time? Number one is a big thing, but then how do you have the energy? Because obviously you've known me for a
Mhm.
long time. So I've
He has a lot of energy.
Yeah,
And it wasn't
I
just Monster. You
correct,
didn't
and
need
actually,
Monster.
truth be told, I never drank Monster because it's a horrible,
No.
horrible thing
Yeah.
to drink.
Yeah, sucralose is really bad for you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. Um, but yeah, I always had kind of like this, I don't wanna say chip on my shoulder, but I've always kind of had
That's
like,
right.
I gotta prove something to myself, not
Sure.
necessarily a chip for other people, but it was kind of a tough road for me for a while. When I finally found like a really cool company that I wanted to work for, which was Coca-Cola and then Monster and then this other company, I kind of felt like I had my dream job at Monster, and I felt like
Hmm.
it was like what I was meant to do because it was in marketing. It was, I mean, I was negotiating contracts with big brands and athletes, and I'm hanging out with like Rob Gronkowski in Tampa. Like it was just it was the
It's
coolest
cool.
thing. It
Right,
was
it was
so cool.
cool. The cool factor was there.
Like when I told people I worked at Monster, like, oh, like they were so
Oh, I
impressed.
know, I get that because I work
Yeah,
for Crown Royal, and people are like, "Oh,
same thing. Yeah,
ooh."
so
I'm
jazzed
like,
up, and I was like,
"It's much
then I
more interesting than your own business."
correct, yeah, and then I realized, okay, this is cool, but what else can I do? Because
Yeah,
I'm not, most jobs, they only allow you to do X amount of things, right?
sure.
Um, so I was kind of capped. So I was doing my podcast on the side and I enjoyed that way more anyway. And
Mm,
I enjoyed just social media, making content, and just kind of learning about the content side of things and the creator economy and how that was blowing up the last decade and how it continues to grow. Um, but then I was like, all right, well, I'll stick this thing out at Monster. I'll figure it out.
sure. Well, yeah, comfortable. That
Comfortable, but then unfortunately, a few things happened where there were some disagreements with how I should spend my personal life. They actually busted my balls a little bit for my podcast because
for
I
the
was,
podcast. I think I remember this.
yeah, because I was talking about other brands
Right,
that
so
weren't,
yeah. Yeah,
God
that weren't
forbid,
months. Right.
I have free speech. So they gave me
Okay.
an ultimatum, and obviously I
Wow.
parted ways.
Yep.
Um, and then it was just a snowball effect of I worked for this other company that paid me more, and I was way happier. But
I mean,
then
oh,
the whole company went bankrupt.
well. Oh.
Um, and I was like second in command, so I was obviously one of the first ones to get laid off. But during that time, actually, during the week, matter of fact, that I got laid off, found out that I had a tumor in my lung. Um,
The same week.
and the same week, yeah,
Holy
and
crap.
they said that it needed to be removed, but they can't remove the tumor; they have to remove a portion of my lung.
Whew.
So already, I was very upset
Whoa,
for
yep.
a lot of reasons. And during this time, we're also my wife and I have been trying to get pregnant for almost 2 years, so we've been kind of hit
Always the challenge, yep.
constantly. And we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on IVF treatments and IUI, which is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, so now I got to go remove this freaking tumor. And I had a third of my lung removed. The recovery was brutal. And then when I got out of the hospital, my father in law passed away.
Oh my gosh.
So my wife's father. So it was just like back to back, and that's when I decided to really go on
Like,
the business because I felt like I was trying to do everything right. I felt like I was trying to do the corporate ladder, the save
mhm,
money,
mhm,
you
what
know,
you're supposed to do, right? Like,
exactly what we're
supposed to. Yeah,
told is the
yeah,
American dream, and you got to do it. And
yep.
I don't know. I think just after getting beat up so many times and trying to keep a smile on my face, I was like, the only thing that's gonna keep me secure mentally, and then, of course, financially, and it's gonna be hard work, but is counting on me, counting on Tony,
Yes,
relying on 100% myself because a lot of this stuff was out of my control, of course, but, I don't wanna go down this rabbit hole, but I'm very confident 'cause I'm a healthy person, you know.
you are. You've always had
The I
always
started to grow this tumor, they say about 6 to 7 months is how long it took, and I did the math, and 6 months
stress.
prior to that, I, had to get that for
Oh,
the
and what that
pandemic.
is, you can't it's a
For the
interesting.
pandemic. Yeah,
You
I
had
don't wanna
so
say it on
right
here 'cause I don't
before
I don't want you to get canceled, but
a
a
shot,
vaccine a shot. I had
shot.
to get a prick in the, but
And you had to, right, for
it was
your
company
company?
mandated. It was company
Yeah,
mandated.
yeah,
So that
isn't it crazy that that was allowed to have a company mandate on these things?
and there's no repercussions for what
Yep,
happened to me and hundreds of thousands of other people. So, again, I just looked at that, I looked at the combination of things, and then my company that I worked for got laid off because they went
yep,
bankrupt, and I'm like, all this stuff was out of my control. It's not like I was a shitty employee drinking on the job, like,
right.
a lot of this stuff was out of my control. So,
Yep,
I know if I go all in, it's gonna be more difficult. I'm gonna have probably more hours that I'm gonna have to work. Me and my wife might have a little stress. We might have to cut back on spending. Maybe we got to downsize. Like, who knows? I was prepared for all of it because I knew that I didn't need
Mhm.
money to really be happy, and I didn't need
Sure.
materialistic things to be happy. And I think that was
Yep.
the wake up call for me, which was with all this stuff that happened, and I did everything right for fucking decades.
Yeah.
But then this was the card that I was dealt, the hand I was dealt.
Yep.
I was like, no, no way. And I looked at it like a huge positive. And I got to tell you, I've never been happier because the main reason why was because I knew eventually we were going to get pregnant. We are going to figure it out. We're going to have a kid. But now I'm able to work from home. I don't
Yep.
report to anybody. Like I put my baby down before our last podcast. So my baby's sleeping right now. When I get off here, I'm going to hang out with her for the rest of the day.
Yep.
And I don't have to text my boss. I don't have to like go
You don't
on
have to get
Microsoft
it
Teams.
approved.
Like, yeah,
Yep. Get
nothing. So
pinged. Yeah.
it's just, I don't regret any of it, and I know, that, it brings tears to my eyes, everything that did happen to me and my wife during that time, but I'm so glad it
She
did
had a heck of
because
a journey
it's
too.
she had a shittier journey than me, in my opinion, but, she stuck with me through it, and we powered through, and we did all
Well,
that
she's
together,
kinda
and
cool. We kinda like her.
she's a cool one, she's a keeper. I'm definitely
She
gonna
is.
keep her for at least another couple decades, for sure. So,
Good news, Brenda. Good news.
yeah, yeah, but,
Hope she's on the same page.
yeah. So yeah, man. So that's kind of that those were the incidences the last couple of years that I think kind of really
Pushed
put me
you.
where I'm at today. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Do you looking back, this is something that I've reflected on the show before. Looking back, do you see and has it come into a better picture, like, how the dots have connected? Like,
Mm,
I find that during your journey, everything feels, like, random, right? Like, "Oh, why am I all of a sudden doing this?" Or, "How is this?" But then when you look in the rearview mirror, you see how the dots connect. Do
mm,
you see how you went through different experiences, you had different jobs, you had different hobbies, different things, and how that all led you to no, a college degree didn't put you where you are today, but how all these things kinda tied together.
yeah,
Do
yeah.
you see a thread?
It is cool to look at that for sure. Especially as you get older. I don't think you really have that thought process till maybe like mid
Oh,
30s,
gosh, no.
right? But it is funny, like reflecting back on it. Like I have, thankfully, my dad captured a lot of content, quote unquote content, when I was a kid,
Right.
literally just the VHS camcorder.
Hey, man.
But I look back at some of that footage and I actually, because I made him a video, for Father's Day last year, and so I was looking back at all this footage, and I actually had the camcorder, and I would do these, like, episodes, and I would call it Tony
Oh,
Talk.
yes.
This
Tony
is a
talk.
real thing,
I love
and
Tony.
I called it Tony Talk, and I would interview my parents,
Perfect.
and I would ask them, this is I mean, I think I was in middle school, so, I don't know, what am I, 12, 13, 14 at the time?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
little did I know I was planting the seed of having a podcast and talking to people and just having conversations.
And having more Tony talk.
And having more Tony Talk. And, when I first started this podcast, I called it Tony Talk, but now obviously it's evolved to something more mature. Um, but it is funny how you connect the dots and you look back at all this stuff, and it's like, I don't necessarily believe we're all meant to do something, blah, blah, blah. But I think there are certain things that are laid in our path throughout our childhood that could be our future if we pursue it. Unfortunately, I think the vast majority of us listen to outside
Well-meaning.
influences and yeah, and other people so that we kind of go to the other fork in the road, which really
Mhm,
we
mhm.
were on the right path, but maybe we just got derailed a little bit. So it's fun to look back at these instances and you know, that's the path that I'm on now. It's cool. It's cool.
I think it's really important to acknowledge it and talk about it because if I'm somebody younger or if even older, like when you're feeling lost and you find, a show like this and people talking about how they're successful and what they do for confidence, it's good to be raw and real and reassure that, yeah, you might feel like you're all over the place and none of this connects, but it really will. It really is gonna all come together for something if you
Yeah.
let it. But like you
Yeah.
said, you gotta let it and you gotta pursue it. You gotta pursue those interests. You gotta let those experiences happen. You gotta trust that, it's all gonna come to fruition for you.
For sure. And
Yeah.
I think, when I was managing at some of my other companies, when I had direct reports and even when I'm doing public speaking, I always my biggest thing that I always look at people and I say, here's how you can improve your life with a snap of a finger is strengths and weaknesses. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And if you can identify those weaknesses and be self aware of what those are, and then search how to make those your strengths, eventually you're not going to have a lot of weaknesses. And
Mm,
if you do get to that point, of course, we're all going to have weaknesses no matter what, but those weaknesses won't matter like they do today in your 20s. You think that you have all these issues and you need to improve XYZ, but really there's only one or two things you need to improve on. Maybe that's balancing a checkbook, maybe that's saving money, maybe that's looking for a
oh,
career, like all these
yeah,
things you can get answers to pretty quickly. And I think the faster you can figure out what those weaknesses are in terms of the strengths, I think your confidence is gonna really flourish from that point because it's those little wins that I think make us a little bit more excited to press on and
yeah.
continue. That's one thing I learned when I kept getting beaten down was I was like, there's a win somewhere.
There's gotta be
Like
something. Everything happens for a reason.
I just gotta fucking
Gotta
push
be
through
something.
these. Yeah. So I think that's the thing is you just gotta figure out a way to get wins a lot. And to do that is again, just focus on the weaknesses and make those strengths somehow through podcasting or, through networking, having mentors, etc. I think is very beneficial for sure.
You definitely you gotta push through the weaknesses, and you gotta work on them and identify them, and some of them might never really change, like, I'm bad at spelling. I'm never gonna
Yeah.
be bad at spelling. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
I know spelling is not my forte. When I make a video and I put captions in or duh, I know I need to go and put it in a different program that has spell check and make sure I did it correctly. But
Yeah.
that's okay, and I have come to terms with it instead of just being mad about it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Acknowledgement will push you so much further ahead. And then likewise, it's also important to remember that anytime you do something for the first time, it is always the hardest time.
Hmm.
You are
Yeah.
gonna work it up in your head and make it into this so much bigger thing than it really is,
For sure.
and it's gonna be such a huge step, and then every step after that is gonna be so much smaller,
Yeah.
like, so much smaller,
Yeah.
and when you realize that, even for your strengths, like, it's so much easier to continue to push forward and just say, "You know what? This first step is gonna be hard, it's gonna be scary, but if I don't take it, I'm never gonna get to the smaller steps, and it's
That's
just
right.
gonna become easier and easier."
That's right. Yeah, like even as a new parent, I mean, I've
Oh,
never
yeah.
I've never done this thing before. Obviously you're a
Have a
parent too, but
baby.
it's so funny how like, your spouse does this like crazy wild thing where she creates a human for 9 months and
Super
then
weird.
pushes her out of like a hole in her body. And you're like, this is insane, number one. But then number two, she recovers just fine. Like she's back to normal now. It's obviously
So
a
weird
long
how we bounce back.
it's a long road, but the more fascinating thing to me is like we just left the hospital with a human and they were okay with it. Like there was no, like I don't think a lot of people talk about that. There's no like instruction manual, there's discharge papers, but they just let us leave.
How irresponsible of them.
So weird. Like I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. And they just
Rude.
trusted us, and but their I guess metric for making sure we're good parents. I don't know if you know this,
Probably
is
not.
they walk down with you and watch you put the baby in the car seat without saying anything. And
Oh.
apparently, like, if you don't do a good job, they say something. And I don't
What
know
do
if
they
they
say,
report
though?
you or I don't know if they report you or something. I don't know what they do, but all I know is they
I
were
mean, can
very
they do
vigilant.
anything?
They were very vigilant looking at us. But that's like the only thing they do in terms of micromanaging us taking care of a human out of the hospital and bringing
You're
them
like,
home.
"You're humaning, so, there's 2 of
Eh,
you, you'll figure it out."
like we're never going to see these people again. Good luck.
"Oh,
So
you were
but that I realized what my strengths were and what my weaknesses were. Like I definitely have grown to be, I think, a good father so far. And I'm still working on things every day, but I realize that like my patience is not very good. I realize I have anger problems. I realize that I care about sleep a lot more than I used to. And yeah, there's
worry
just
all."
yeah, dude, there's just little things where it's fascinating how we continue to grow and evolve, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that's why you always have to be self-aware of, like, what you suck at, and when I realized I wasn't good at something, I would ask my wife that is good with kids, or we together would research and figure out ways to be better, and I don't think people do that enough because they always say they're busy or Yeah, and that's because you're spending time on things that you think are gonna make you happy short term, right? Watching Netflix or,
Or
going out
just or
drinking
just,
or whatever.
cover up the wound rather than
Sure.
address it. I think
Yeah.
that's something I've come to realize that we all have trauma from
Mm,
childhood, no matter how well-intentioned our parents were or whatever environment we grew up in, you know, outside forces. But most people don't take the time to acknowledge and then do the work, and
mm,
then from that trauma and work through it. And that's where it's crazy because you'll see somebody in their 80s and you're like, "I don't understand how you could be so childish about this event." It's because they've never healed from that trauma. So really, it's just a whole bunch of hurt humans that grow up and are adults, but they never really grew up and they never really got over it or understood how to emotionally involve. And the emotional intelligence, I think, is actually getting worse because
yeah.
we have so many outlets for us to just ignore or cover up or avoid, I guess is the best word, those
Mhm.
traumas and really work through it. But as a human, that's the beauty is that we have the opportunity to choose to change. I talked about this in my
Yeah.
last thing too. Like we're the only things that get to choose that. Think about it. What
Yeah.
else do you know that gets to choose to change? A tree doesn't get to choose to change. A dog doesn't even get to choose to change
No.
unless they run away. But
Right.
that's about the extent of the choice.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like, we're the only beings that have that.
there's not a lot of free will, and,
No.
yeah, we're the only species that really and that we're aware of it
Yes, but
too.
so many people choose not to change and
Yeah,
blame it on so many other things, and it's like, well, you gotta sit down and make that choice, and you get
that's
that
right.
option every day.
Yeah, that's right.
It's hard, and it could suck, but you gotta make the choice.
Yeah, and I realize the more and more you focus on your health, mental and physical, that I think just overall you'll feel better. Like you'll be less stressed when you focus more on your health. When you spend less time on the screen and more time outside, you'll be happier.
That's huge.
Just that's just scientific with vitamin D and just our ability to disconnect from the dopamine hit that we are getting from our phones. It's
Completely.
just when you could really make a schedule and a routine to focus on your health as, like, first and foremost. Like,
Mhm.
Brenda always busts my chops about this, but, like, I will literally find weird times to work out. Like, sometimes I'll work out, like, at 5 o'clock when we all get off, and she's, like, making dinner, and then I work out for 15 minutes. She's like, "Why do you do that?" I go, "'Cause if I don't do it at some point,
I
then"
gotta get something in, yeah.
yeah, 2
Try to
days,
walk
3
the
days,
dog
4
at
days
least
go.
once every day.
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
just get outside, put the phone in my pocket, try not to pull it back out, like, just
Mhm.
connect, move your body, get some I think, especially with computers, so many people are just sitting
Yeah,
all day, every day, and you're not getting your steps in, you're not moving your body, and then you're surprised that your health deteriorates, and it's like,
yeah,
well,
yeah.
move it or lose it.
And then you're eating a bunch of, shit when you do
Oh,
sit
yeah.
down for
Well,
dinner,
that's
it's
That's
so, yeah,
that's
it's
the big thing, right? You gotta choose what so my theory on that one is, if I don't buy it and have it in my house, I won't eat it.
mm, smart.
So we don't buy Oreos and we don't buy chips. And,
Yeah,
like, I don't have candy in the house, like, I just and even the kids know, they're like, "Oh, no, don't bother." I'll be like, "Oh, you want anything from the store?" They don't ask me for Pepperidge Farm cookies, like,
yeah,
"Nope, I'm not gonna" as Imma straight up tell you no, like
yeah,
because I don't have a lot of will. I
that's
know
fair.
that. I know if you put me in front of a box of Pizza Hut pizza, Imma eat that pizza,
Of
and it's
course.
terrible for you, and I don't even really like it that much, but Imma eat it.
Yeah. Well,
Imma eat the whole thing Oreos, like, no.
there's this weird thing that happens to us because I think, obviously it's chemically, it's just artificial bullshit that is meant to addict us, right? To get
Oh,
us
yeah.
addicted to it.
Absolutely.
So there's something because I look at like my daughter and she's not even 2 yet. And the way she eats, she loves like broccoli and food, like she
Mhm.
likes whole
'Cause she's
foods
been exposed to it.
because that's what we give her. And then I was thinking about this the other day when she's starting to get kind of picky. And I'm like, probably at some point, I can't speak for my parents, but I would imagine the vast majority of babies get to a point to where the parents are like, we
Ease.
could cook, but Cheez-Its are so much faster.
Ease.
Here's
Mhm.
some Cheez-Its. Here's the
Pass
and
on
then
3
even
str It's the
yeah,
same with the phone, that's what parents do, they're like,
that's
"Here,
right.
be entertained."
Yeah, yeah. And this is
Not
where as
good.
a parent, you have to kind of like get really good at patience and be self-aware. And, we don't give our daughter the phone or iPad or screen time, nothing like that. And it's very tough because we both work from home and Sometimes it's easy to throw on YouTube and just, but
Mhm.
we tell ourselves that if we could just power through for a couple years, it's going to be way better for her. She won't have tantrums. Like there's a lot of science behind this stuff. And when I tell other parents this, they're like, "Well, how do you have the time?" And I was like, "Dude, we
You
make
make
the
the
time.
time.
It sucks, but we make it. We just got to do it." Like,
You make the time.
why do you work out? You got to make the time
Yep.
because you won't be able to work out when you're 80. So you need to work out in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. So that way you can live to your 80, 90 and actually be able to walk around and be healthy,
Mhm. You'll be
but
it's funny, so I'm in bird boot camp, and, they often post things of, like, you're lifting the weights in the gym to do this so you can carry the grocery bags in, right? Like, they post
yeah,
that type of content to help people realize, like, you're lifting weights for a reason. It's not just to buff up or whatever. It's so that you can do your life easier,
yeah,
longer,
that's right.
and effectively, and more happily.
Yeah. And it's worth it, man,
Huge. It's
for
totally
sure.
worth it. It's totally worth it. Well, kudos to you guys for despite being in the screen world and making money from it, you're aware to not have your kid having it just 24/7. It's really ruining brains. I really think it is.
Yeah. It's the mush. And I know it's ruining brains because it's ruining my brain. Like when
Yep. Thank you.
you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you know how one way you know that you're addicted, and I realized this about a year ago when I started, we talked about this on my podcast, but when I started posting and ghosting, so I would just post something and not pick up my
I
phone.
love yeah, yep.
I realized that because we have a dog, when I was on my phone scrolling and then he needed to go outside, I would get very irritated.
Annoyed? Yeah. Yeah.
And because it stopped me from scrolling.
Yes.
And that is a problem. If you are getting irritable when your wife or your husband tells you, "Hey, do you wanna pick a movie?" When you're scrolling and you get like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
problem, bro, and I
Yeah,
think
or
a
the
lot
long
of the
delay.
or the
Sometimes I
that's
get
the
that,
worst.
like,
Yeah.
I say something and then there's a long delay, and eventually somebody in the household's like, "Oh, yeah, this," and I'm like, "Hi, hello,
Yeah.
real world here, like, come back to it,
Yeah.
put your phone down."
And it all comes down to routines. I mean, the more you can stick to a routine and do it, like stop using your phone at 8 p.m. or whatever it is, and just stick to that for a couple weeks. It's gonna be very hard. You're gonna have to get used to it. Like I stopped drinking a couple years ago, so I've been sober for a long time. But when I stopped drinking completely, it's like things opened up because it was just in the routine now. So like when I go out
Yeah.
with friends and I don't drink, they used to bust my balls, but now they know what time it is. But it's like I don't want it anymore. And that's
Mm,
how a phone needs to be, is like when you can disconnect
yeah.
for a little bit and get yourself on a routine where you're certain times of the day you're not using it. It's gonna suck at first, but then it'll just be routine at that point.
It's funny you should
You
say
know?
that about drinking. We're doing dry January
Nice.
because, I work in the alcohol world and I need a break, and I was feeling, mm, not fulfilled at the end of the year, right? I
Yeah.
didn't feel happy about everything, and I was like, "You know what? I just need to take a break from this." And somebody recently I was at a baby shower, and the host, she was like, "Oh, how's it been going? Has it been difficult?" And I was like, "Yeah, the first bit of it was." The first few days was harder, and I was more aware, and I was like, "Oh, let
Right.
me find alternatives." So, like, one night I made a fancy protein shake and put it in a fancy martini glass. And then, I made sure I had kombucha in the house as an alternative, and then I
That's
bought
right.
soda waters and this and that, but the first probably week or so was the hardest
Yeah.
because I was so aware. I was
Mhm.
like, "Ugh, I'm not drinking." And then I realized I had gone a few days and hadn't thought about it at all. Because my
Yeah.
idea with first was like, "Oh, maybe I'll create some content around what am I drinking that's not alcohol," because everybody knows me as somebody who has alcohol in their life a lot.
Yeah.
But then I forgot because it wasn't something that I felt like I needed, and so
Yeah.
it waned. It was a little bit more difficult when we went out. We went out to this dueling piano at a bar, and it was fun, but it was kinda eye-opening because I just had non-alcoholic beers,
Yeah.
because they exist now. Thank you,
Alright.
Heineken, Corona, and Guinness. Thank you for that, for
Yeah.
having tasty non-alcoholic beers. But, like, I had a couple and I was over it. And
Right.
I was, like, watching all these people who were drunk and holding their massive wine glass, dancing around, acting a fool, and I'm like, "Huh, I'm not mad, that's not me."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when you're looking at it from that side, it's kinda wild, and, that doesn't mean, I mean, hey, if you're in your 20s, live, but
Yeah, and,
There's just
I'm not gonna completely like, we have
yeah,
some good ones. I'm still gonna have a wine with a nice dinner, but
of course, yeah.
it's very eye-opening to see the difference.
Yeah. Well, and there's just so many more studies that are coming out, like that whole study of, a glass of wine a day or something is good. That's all bullshit. These are all
Oh, of
a
course.
lot of these studies are put out by,
The
just
people who make the thing,
the people who make it.
like
Yeah. So
cigarettes weren't, bad, and then, oh, actually they are.
yeah, like back in the day, like I forget what companies. I think it was Camel and one other
Yes,
one, but
yes, there was Marlboro, I think it
Marlboro.
was,
Yeah,
and they had
they were
studies.
paying
It was
doctors. Yeah, they were
yes,
paying doctors to actually prescribe cigarettes to
which is
people
the
because they
same with some of our foods and these
yeah
dyes and these, artificial sweeteners, like, "Oh, it's
yeah
fine." No, the
it's
science is
fascinating.
not quite accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's where we all got to get to this point of like confidence and being true to ourselves and understanding that we have control over a lot of stuff. And I think the more we can do our own research, focus on our health, focus on kind of like how can we live better lives, like you, me, and the family. How
Mhm.
can we do that combined and focus really on that? And I think you're just gonna live a healthier life. A lot of people
Yep.
are getting sucked into materialistic stuff and looking on the screens and all that. And I think if you could just again focus on like I don't want to say higher powers, but maybe that too. But at
Yeah, I
least
was gonna say, well,
yeah, maybe
that's
that too.
I'm there
But
too.
but for me it's more like focusing on something that is bigger than myself in terms of like, you know, we're so lucky, like, especially when
Mm.
I had the thing with the tumor. I just had, like, a fucking epiphany. It wasn't really religious or spiritual. It was just like, um, they gave me that news, and I looked at my wife, and I was like, this might be it. Like, it might be cancer."
Yeah, we are finite. We are
It's
not
you don't
forever.
know. And dude, I'm
You
39.
don't know. Yeah,
I'm 30 I mean, that happened when I was 38. Like, it didn't make any sense to me, and I especially because I worked out every day. I mean, I used to
right.
be a personal trainer, right?
Well, yeah, exactly.
So
Drink a lot
that
of water.
Yeah, so that to me just it opened up my eyes to like every moment counts, and the more you waste time, you're just gonna regret it. Because I regretted so many things, like it was like a flash before my eyes where it's like, I can't believe I wasted time this. I should have been hanging out with family. I should have been hanging out with my wife. Like, I can't believe I did. It was just like so I vowed to not do that with my daughter, and I've never missed a day with her. And there's gonna be like, an act of God would have to prevent me from doing something crazy to not be able to spend time with her and my wife. So
Well, it's
yeah.
the most time you're ever gonna spend with your kid is while they're a kid,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
because
think
eventually
about
they're gonna run
I
away.
think about it. Yeah, I'm for sure, like, my
Yeah,
eldest is in Hawaii. He's in the Army, stationed in Hawaii. We're not gonna have as much time anymore, right? Like, the
that's
time
crazy.
has the most time is gone. It's happened.
Ugh,
It's not coming back. He's in Hawaii, he got stationed in Tokyo, and I'm so happy for him. He's having an amazing time, and it's fan freaking tastic.
yeah,
From my husband's perspective, he's 51, he's like, "That time is gone," and now his parents are elderly,
sure.
and, we're on that other end of it of like, "Oh, is this the last Christmas?
Right.
Is that the last card?" Um, and so when you start to really look at a bigger picture, and I would recommend this for anybody. When you look at the bigger picture, then you start to see other people's opinions don't matter.
Mm,
Like you said, I post and ghost. How many likes I get doesn't matter,
right.
right? Like that one comment will touch somebody's lives. And a saying I've had for a long time is, "Who you inspire is beyond what you know."
Mm,
Because I grew up in New England and I moved away pretty quickly and I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't the cool kid, right? And I have had people post, not like post on the wall, but like
right.
after that, come to me and actually, through Facebook Messenger or whatnot and be like, "Oh, I always looked up to you," or "I had a crush on you," or, all these things that I had no idea were happening because we all live in our own little bubble
Yeah,
that we don't see how what we are doing and our choices are affecting other people. They just might not step up and say something.
yeah. True.
So you gotta let all of that, go and just live for you and in the moment. And like you're saying with social media, I have I've been big on, like, don't regret things, right?
Mhm.
And I think, this thought has popped in my head recently, like when I'm just aimlessly doom scrolling.
Sure.
Am I gonna regret this?
Right. Yeah.
Am I gonna look back on my life and be like, "What
Yeah.
did I spend so much time doing this? Unnecessary
Yeah.
BS."
Yeah. And
Probably.
we definitely would most of us would probably say, "I'm gonna regret it."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's usually
What am
what
I doing?
happens.
Yeah. If you look at it in retrospect or like I planned my whole year out, not completely, but I got this big ass calendar. It's literally what it's called. It's from Jesse Itzler. It's called the big ass
Oh,
calendar.
sure. I know it.
Classic.
Yeah.
It's
That's
huge,
cool.
right? I had never looked at my entire year and started to put things on the calendar, and that changes your perspective. Like, it's only so many days. It's only so many months, and I've got, like, little sticky notes up there, and yellow is for birthdays and holidays, and red is for date nights, and right now I only have 4 date nights on my year-long calendar. That's not enough.
That's
I
crazy,
only
yeah.
have 1 vacation. That's not enough. I only have 1 stage booked right now, right? Like, when you look at it from a different perspective, it really makes you say, "I don't care what other people think. I'm gonna do what makes me happy
Yeah.
because I deserve that."
Yeah. Well said.
That's that. That's and on that note,
Well said. Subscribe for more.
come on back now.
No, dude, that's great. Yeah, no, well said for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tony, it is about time that I have to let you run away and go be with the baby. I do
And
believe.
I know another 40 minutes. That's crazy. Time flies.
No, it's when you have somebody that you know and you connect with, it's not that difficult to have good conversations. I think the
Yeah.
world is craving good conversations.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think they're gonna get it out of your podcast for sure.
Come on back. Oh, that's why Elon's so successful. He just has real conversations.
Yeah.
He opens his podcast is great because he's just having real people are
Yeah.
craving the real world, not
Yeah.
this reality world, not this celebrity bullshit.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
and just going back to you like your confidence,
yeah.
and for people that want to work on confidence, I mean, to me, having conversations like this and just having a podcast or having some outlet, whether that's a blog or FaceTiming a friend or whatever it is, if you could figure out a way to have those conversations with people, it just opens up your perspective a little bit more. You become more objective. I challenge people to have conversations with people that you don't know anything about.
Mm,
Like almost every single podcast guest that I have, like I have one later today, I've never met her. Um, like she reached out to me on social media, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I never looked at an Instagram page, and I'm just gonna turn on the camera, and
see what happens.
we're just gonna talk, man. Because it's,
Yeah,
I hope I disagree with her on a lot of things, because usually when I disagree with people, those are like the best conversations because I learn a little bit. Hopefully,
yeah.
they learn a little bit. And if you just agree with everybody, that's why a relationship
Isn't that
that you're
boring?
kind of the opposite, that's why those usually work, is
Yeah.
because you bring the best out of each other and you can learn from each other that way. If you marry the same person that is you, it's just boring. You
Who
don't want
wants
to deal with that. No, I don't
color in
like
your
that.
life?
Yeah. Like I never wanted kids. Put that in perspective. Like my wife convinced me to have a kid and now it's like the greatest thing on the planet. Like I never
My
wanted
husband didn't
kids.
want a dog. No, he's obsessed with our dog.
There you
Is that the
go.
same? Alright, well,
See, he needed you. And those are the exact same thing, by the way. A dog and a kid. It's the
totally
same.
the same.
Yeah. They eventually all wear diapers. Yeah, for sure.
No, it's funny, my kids will give me a hard time because I baby the dog, and I'm like, "He doesn't have to go live in the real world like you do. He's just gonna stay with me and be pampered his whole life. So, I can baby him if I want. You, on the other hand, no. I am not gonna baby you. You need to go be a productive member of society
Yes.
someday." They hate
I
when I
need
say
to
that.
I need to train you to be a correct human. Yes.
It is my duty to make sure you are not a bane on the existence of humanity.
Yes. Physically and also like,
Physically, you know?
financially, like there might be
Make me
repercussions.
great
Like,
as a parent.
yeah, you might end up in jail if you're a bad parent. So it's a big deal. You got to
I
do the
must
right
be
things.
very interesting as a step parent, I'm not gonna lie.
Probably. I'd love to, yeah, get the Ring camera in the indoor of that house and see how that goes.
They
No.
they they hate and love me simultaneously, I'm sure of it, and that's okay. That's what your kids are supposed to do, really.
Yeah, that means you're a good parent. Yeah.
That's exactly the good parenting issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can do that, you're doing something right. Well, Tony, I appreciate you coming on. Will you tell the peoples about your podcast, where to find it, where to find you if they wanna learn and hear more? And of course, I will put it all in the show notes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So you could find me on all platforms at the Berardo. It's my last name, the Berardo. And my podcast is called Humanity and Hashtags. You could find it on YouTube, where I do all long form video podcasts as well as Spotify, Apple, all that. And yeah, I have a content business. So if you're interested in seeing about how to make content or get better at podcasting, or even just follow my journey on trying to be a new parent, it's a lot of fun. You could follow me on Instagram is my big platform there.
Perfect. Well, thanks
Amanda,
for coming on
pleasure.
by.
Okay,
Pleasure
bye.
having you. Have a great day.
You too. Later.